My boss demoted me. Then he saw my entrepreneurial launch. The conference room went silent when Troy Daniels stood up, pointed directly at me, and said the words that would end his career. "Walter, you're too old to keep up with where this company is going. Effective immediately, you're being reassigned to inventory management. 23 years of service. 23 years of building client relationships, mentoring young employees, and driving revenue that kept this company profitable through 2 recessions. And now, at 56 years old, I was being demoted to counting boxes in a warehouse by a 32-year-old who'd been handed his position because his father sat on the board. Everyone in that room was staring at me, waiting for me to explode, to argue, to beg for my job back. The junior executives looked uncomfortable. The department heads avoided eye contact. Troy stood there with his arms crossed, smirking like he'd just won some kind of victory. But I didn't explode. I didn't argue. I simply stood up, gathered my presentation materials, and said 5 words that would haunt Troy for the rest of his professional life. Thank you for the opportunity. What Troy didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that I had been preparing for this exact moment for 6 months. Every humiliation, every undermining comment, every attempt to push me out had been carefully documented. And more importantly, I had been building something that would make his arrogance the most expensive mistake of his career. They thought they were pushing me out. What they didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment all along. My name is Walter Brennan, and for 23 years, I believed that loyalty and hard work would be rewarded. I started at Henderson Manufacturing Solutions fresh out of college, back when the company was just 12 employees working out of a converted warehouse in Cleveland. I watched this company grow from nothing into a $40 million operation. I brought in our first major contracts. I trained 3 generations of sales representatives. I missed my daughter's dance recitals, my son's baseball games, and countless family dinners because Henderson Manufacturing needed me. When my wife Catherine was diagnosed with breast cancer 8 years ago, I took exactly 3 days off for her surgery, then came right back to work because we had a major client presentation. Catherine understood. She always understood. That's what you do when you're building something meaningful, right? You sacrifice. I gave everything to this company because I believed in something old-fashioned. That dedication would be recognized, that experience had value, that the relationships I'd built over 2 decades meant something. Then Troy Daniels showed up. Troy was hired 2 years ago as Director of Strategic Innovation, a made-up title that basically meant his father, board member Howard Daniels, wanted his son to have an executive position without actually earning it. Troy had an MBA from a mediocre business school, 3 years of experience at a tech startup that failed, and an ego the size of Lake Erie. From day one, Troy made it clear he thought everyone over 40 was obsolete. He talked constantly about disrupting traditional business models and leveraging synergies, corporate buzzwords that meant absolutely nothing but sounded impressive to people who didn't know any better. He surrounded himself with other young executives who shared his contempt for anyone with actual experience. They'd have meetings about modernizing our approach that really just meant eliminating anyone who remembered how to build genuine client relationships. The first sign of real trouble came about 18 months ago. I had just closed a $2.3 million contract with Riverside Industrial, our biggest deal that quarter. I'd spent 6 months building that relationship, understanding their needs, and customizing our solutions to solve their specific problems. Troy called me into his office the day after the contract was signed. "Walter, we need to talk about your approach to client relations." I sat down, confused. My approach just landed us our biggest contract this year. That's the problem. You're spending too much time on relationship building. In today's business environment, we need efficiency, quick closes, digital engagement. Your method is outdated. My method works. For now, but clients want speed and innovation, not lunch meetings and golf outings with some old guy who's been doing the same thing for 20 years. That's when I realized Troy wasn't interested in what worked. He was interested in replacing anyone who made him look inexperienced by comparison. Over the next year, Troy systematically undermined everything I'd built. He reassigned my major accounts to younger sales reps who promptly lost 3 of them within 6 months. He excluded me from strategy meetings. He questioned my expense reports and client entertainment budgets. But the worst part was the public humiliation. Troy would make comments in meetings about old-school thinking and resistance to change while looking directly at me. He'd ask junior employees to explain basic technology concepts to me in front of others, implying I was too old to understand. 6 months ago, I overheard a conversation that changed everything. I was working late, walking past Troy's office, when I heard him on the phone. "Don't worry, Dad. I'm handling the Walter situation. Give me another quarter, and I'll have him out completely. Can't have these dinosaurs dragging down our modern image." Besides, his salary could fund 2 hungry young reps who actually know how to close deals in today's market. That's when I stopped believing in loyalty and started planning my exit, on my terms, not his. The morning after overhearing Troy's phone call, I arrived at work 2 hours early. I needed time to think, to process what I'd learned, to figure out my next move. For 23 years, I believed that hard work and dedication would protect me, that the relationships I'd built, the revenue I'd generated, and the loyalty I'd shown would mean something when it mattered. But listening to Troy casually discuss eliminating me like I was an obsolete piece of equipment shattered that illusion completely. I sat at my desk in the empty office, staring at the photos on my wall. My family, my sales awards, pictures of client appreciation events, and company milestones I'd helped achieve. Every one of those accomplishments suddenly felt meaningless in the face of Troy's indifference. But something else was happening too. Beneath the hurt and anger, a different emotion was emerging: clarity. Troy wasn't pushing me out because I was failing. He was pushing me out because I represented everything he lacked: genuine relationships, earned respect, decades of industry knowledge. He couldn't compete with that experience, so he was trying to eliminate it. That realization changed everything. I spent the next 3 days quietly observing how Troy actually ran the sales department. What I discovered was shocking, even by the low standards I'd come to expect from him. Troy was overbilling clients by bundling unnecessary services and burying the charges in complex contracts. He was pressuring sales reps to make unrealistic promises just to close deals quickly, knowing the delivery team would struggle to fulfill them. He was cutting corners on quality control to improve profit margins on paper while damaging our reputation with long-term clients. Most damning of all, Troy was taking credit for deals that other people closed. He'd swoop in at the last minute, glad-hand the client at the contract signing, then present the win to upper management as if he'd been involved from the beginning. I started documenting everything. Every questionable contract, every overbilled client, every unrealistic promise made by Troy's team. I saved emails, recorded meeting notes, and kept copies of contracts that showed the discrepancies between what was promised and what was delivered. But I was also documenting something else: every client relationship that was suffering under Troy's modern approach. Every account that was quietly dissatisfied with the declining service quality. Every long-term partner who missed the personalized attention they used to receive. Because I realized something important. The clients Troy was alienating with his efficiency-obsessed approach represented millions of dollars in potential business for someone who still valued relationships over quick closes. Someone like me. For the next 4 months, I became two different people. During the day, I was Walter Brennan, the aging sales manager who was clearly being pushed toward retirement. I showed up, did my reduced responsibilities without complaint, and let Troy and his young executives treat me like a relic from a bygone era. But at night and on weekends, I was someone else entirely: a detective gathering evidence of systematic business malpractice and a strategist building the foundation for my next chapter. The evidence came surprisingly easily once I knew what to look for. Troy was so confident in his untouchability, courtesy of his father's board position, that he barely tried to hide his questionable practices. I found emails where Troy explicitly instructed sales reps to promise capabilities our manufacturing facility couldn't deliver, telling them to just close the deal and we'll figure out the rest later. When those promises inevitably couldn't be fulfilled, clients were told there had been miscommunications and offered minimal compensation for the failures. I discovered contracts where Troy's team had added surcharges for premium services that were actually standard offerings we'd always included at no extra cost. When clients questioned these charges, they were told it was part of the new streamlined pricing structure. Most troubling of all, I found evidence that Troy was deliberately understaffing the quality control department to inflate profit margins, knowing that catching defects before shipment would slow down his efficiency metrics. Defective products were being shipped to clients, then blamed on the manufacturing team when complaints came in. I created a comprehensive file documenting every questionable practice, every overbilled contract, every broken promise. I made digital copies and stored them in 3 separate secure locations. I printed physical backups and kept them in a safety deposit box. But the evidence gathering wasn't just about Troy's misconduct. I was also carefully documenting something more valuable: the business opportunities his approach was destroying. I reached out to 5 of our longest-term clients, companies I'd been working with for over a decade, under the guise of routine check-ins. What I heard confirmed my suspicions. "Walter, honestly, the service quality has declined significantly over the past year," said Brian Kowalski, procurement manager at Midwest Industrial Supply. "We're seriously considering other vendors. The only reason we haven't switched yet is because of our relationship with you." "I miss the old Henderson," said Patricia Nguyen from Great Lakes Manufacturing. "You used to really understand our needs and customize solutions. Now it feels like we're just another number on someone's sales quota spreadsheet." These conversations revealed something crucial. Our clients weren't loyal to Henderson Manufacturing. They were loyal to me. They valued the relationships I'd built, the personalized service I'd provided, the trust I'd earned over years of consistently delivering on promises. Troy's modern approach was systematically destroying the very foundation that made Henderson successful. And when I left, I could take that foundation with me. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to fight to keep my job at Henderson Manufacturing. I was going to build something better. The idea came to me during a sleepless night 3 months before Troy's public demotion. I was lying in bed, thinking about all the clients who had expressed frustration with Henderson's declining service, when Catherine rolled over and said something that changed everything. "Walter, you've been miserable for 2 years. Why are you still trying to save a company that doesn't value you?" "Because it's all I've ever known. 23 years, Catherine. My entire career has been at Henderson." "No," she said firmly. "Your entire career has been building relationships and solving problems for clients. Henderson Manufacturing was just the vehicle. But there are other vehicles." She was right. I'd been so focused on fighting to keep my position at Henderson that I hadn't considered the obvious alternative: taking everything I'd learned and building something new. The next morning, I called my old friend Vincent Castellano. Vincent had left Henderson 5 years earlier to start his own manufacturing consulting firm, and I'd always admired his courage in making that leap. "Vincent, I need advice. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to start a manufacturing solutions consultancy, what would they need?" Vincent laughed. "Walter, there's nothing hypothetical about this question, is there?" I told him everything. Troy's systematic undermining, the evidence I'd gathered, the client relationships that were suffering, my plans to leave on my own terms. "You're sitting on a gold mine and you don't even realize it," Vincent said. "Those client relationships you've built, those are worth more than any salary Henderson could pay you. Start your own consulting firm, bring those relationships with you, and you'll be profitable within 6 months. "I'm 56 years old, Vincent. Is it crazy to start over at this age?" "Walter, you're not starting over. You're finally building something that reflects your actual value instead of someone else's outdated corporate structure. Age isn't your limitation. It's your advantage. You have decades of experience, relationships, and industry knowledge that no 30-year-old can match." That conversation planted the seed, but I needed more than encouragement. I needed a real plan. Over the next 3 months, I systematically prepared to launch my own business while maintaining my facade at Henderson Manufacturing. I registered a company name, Brennan Solutions Group. I hired a lawyer to draft operating documents and ensure everything was legally compliant. I built a simple website showcasing my experience and client testimonials. Most importantly, I had careful, confidential conversations with key clients about what they actually needed from a manufacturing solutions partner. "We need someone who understands our specific challenges instead of trying to sell us standardized packages," Brian Kowalski told me. "We need a partner who returns phone calls, follows through on commitments, and treats us like we matter." "Honestly, Walter, we'd work with you directly if we could," Patricia Nguyen said. "You're the only reason we've stayed with Henderson this long." I wasn't poaching clients, not yet. I was simply having conversations, understanding needs, and building relationships that would survive my departure from Henderson. Everything was ethical and legal, but strategic. By the time Troy publicly demoted me in that conference room, I had already laid the groundwork for something extraordinary. His arrogance was about to fund my independence. What they didn't know was that I had been laying the foundation for months, and the timing couldn't have been better. 3 days after my public demotion, I walked into Catherine's hospital room where she was finishing her latest round of cancer treatment follow-ups. She looked tired but strong, her hair growing back in soft silver curls after her most recent chemotherapy. "How was work?" she asked, the question loaded with the knowledge of what had happened. "Actually, I quit." Catherine sat up straighter. "You did what?" "I resigned this morning. Gave them 2 weeks' notice, though I suspect Troy will tell me to leave immediately once he realizes what I'm doing." I pulled out my laptop and showed her the Brennan Solutions Group website, the business plan, and the preliminary interest I'd received from 5 major clients. Catherine stared at the screen, then at me, then started laughing. Really laughing, the kind of deep, genuine laughter I hadn't heard from her in months. "Walter Brennan, are you telling me you're becoming an entrepreneur at 56? I'm telling you I'm finally building something that recognizes my actual value instead of being limited by someone else's lack of vision." "I'm so proud of you," she said, taking my hand. "Now go show them what they lost." I officially launched Brennan Solutions Group the day my 2-week notice period ended at Henderson Manufacturing. Troy had indeed told me to leave immediately after I submitted my resignation, which was perfect. It gave me 2 extra weeks of paid time to focus on my business launch. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Brian Kowalski from Midwest Industrial Supply called the day my website went live. "Walter, I saw your LinkedIn post about starting Brennan Solutions. We want to be your first client. When can we set up a consultation?" Patricia and Gwen followed within hours. "We've been waiting for this. Send us a proposal for taking over all the work Henderson was doing for us, plus the additional consulting we've been wanting but couldn't get from them." Within the first week, I had signed consulting agreements with 4 companies worth a combined $180,000 annually. Not enough to match my Henderson salary yet, but more than enough to prove the concept worked. By week 3, something unexpected happened. Word was spreading beyond my existing network. I received calls from companies I'd never worked with directly, but who had heard about my reputation from industry colleagues. "We've been frustrated with the declining quality of manufacturing consultants who focus on buzzwords instead of actual solutions," said Norman Hayes from Cleveland Industrial Partners. "Your approach sounds refreshingly practical. Can we talk about a potential engagement?" By the end of month 2, Brennan Solutions Group had 7 active clients and a pipeline of another 12 prospects. Revenue was approaching $30,000 monthly, still less than my Henderson salary, but growing fast. More importantly, I was working with clients who genuinely valued my expertise instead of tolerating my presence. I was solving real problems instead of playing corporate politics. I was building something meaningful instead of watching it be destroyed by someone's ego. But I wasn't just building a business. I was carefully documenting something else. Every Henderson manufacturing client who was expressing dissatisfaction with the declining service quality under Troy's leadership. Because the real reckoning was just beginning. The exposure started quietly, with a single phone call from Brian Kowalski 3 months after I left Henderson. "Walter, we need to talk about something serious. Henderson Manufacturing just delivered a shipment that's completely wrong. Wrong specifications, wrong quantities, and several units appear defective. This is the 3rd problem shipment we've received in 4 months. Have you contacted their quality control department?" "We tried. They're claiming the specifications in our contract match what was delivered, but that's not what was promised during the sales process. We have emails from Troy's sales team explicitly promising different specifications. Send me those emails, along with the contract and delivery documentation. Let me take a look." What Brian sent me was damning. Troy's team had made specific promises about product specifications during the sales process, but the actual contract had been written with vague language that technically allowed Henderson to deliver inferior products. It was a classic bait-and-switch tactic, and it was exactly the kind of practice I'd been documenting before leaving. "Brian, this is systematic fraud. They're intentionally creating ambiguous contracts that let them overpromise during sales and underdeliver during fulfillment. What can we do about it?" "Document everything. Every email, every delivery issue, every broken promise. Then file a formal complaint with the Better Business Bureau and the Manufacturing Integrity Association. You have every right to demand either proper fulfillment or a full refund. Brian followed my advice. Within 2 weeks, his complaint had triggered inquiries from both organizations. Other Henderson clients, seeing Brian's public complaint, started coming forward with their own similar experiences. The floodgates had opened. Patricia Nguyen called me a week later. Walter, we're canceling our Henderson contract and moving everything to Brennan Solutions. We've had enough of broken promises and declining quality. How soon can you take over our account? 3 more clients followed within days. Each one cited the same issues: questionable billing practices, declining service quality, and broken promises from Troy's sales team. But the real explosion came when a local business journalist, Maria Santos, picked up the story. She'd been following the Better Business Bureau complaints and noticed a pattern. Multiple companies reporting similar problems with Henderson Manufacturing, all describing issues that emerged after I left. Maria called me for an interview. Mr. Brennan, I'm investigating allegations of systematic business malpractice at Henderson Manufacturing. Several former clients mentioned that you worked there for over 20 years before recently leaving. Would you be willing to speak on record about what you observed? I had been preparing for this moment since the day I started documenting Troy's practices. I provided Maria with carefully selected evidence that demonstrated the pattern of overbilling, quality issues, and broken promises. Nothing confidential or legally problematic, just factual documentation of public business practices. Maria's article ran in the Cleveland Business Journal with the headline, "Henderson Manufacturing Faces Multiple Client Complaints After Leadership Changes." The article was devastating. It detailed specific examples of overbilling, quoted multiple clients about declining service quality, and included a timeline showing that problems escalated significantly after Troy Daniels took over the sales department. Most damaging of all, the article quoted several industry experts who said Henderson's practices appeared to violate manufacturing industry ethical standards. The story went viral in Cleveland's business community. LinkedIn was flooded with comments from current and former Henderson clients, sharing their own negative experiences. The company's reputation was crumbling in real time. And through it all, Brennan Solutions Group kept growing. Companies that were leaving Henderson weren't just leaving, they were coming directly to me. The legal consequences for Henderson Manufacturing started small, then cascaded into something Troy could never have anticipated. It began with Midwest Industrial Supply filing a formal lawsuit for breach of contract and fraudulent business practices. Their legal team had documented everything: the promises made during sales calls, the ambiguous contract language, and the systematic pattern of underdelivery. They were seeking $400,000 in damages and contract rescission. Within 3 weeks, 2 more clients had filed similar lawsuits. Great Lakes Manufacturing was seeking $275,000. Cleveland Industrial Partners wanted $320,000 plus punitive damages for intentional misrepresentation. But the real damage came from something Troy hadn't considered: the Manufacturing Integrity Association's formal investigation into Henderson's business practices. I received a call from their investigative director, Harold Fleming, 6 weeks after Maria's article published. "Mr. Brennan, we've been conducting a comprehensive review of Henderson Manufacturing's practices over the past 2 years. We'd like to interview you about your observations during your tenure there." I provided a detailed account of everything I'd witnessed and documented: the overbilling practices, the quality control reductions, the systematic pattern of overpromising and underdelivering. Everything was factual, documented, and devastating. 2 months later, the Manufacturing Integrity Association issued their findings. Henderson Manufacturing was in violation of multiple industry ethical standards and would be placed on probationary status pending comprehensive reforms. Any company working with Henderson would be notified of their probationary status. The financial impact was immediate and severe. Henderson's revenue dropped by 40% within the first quarter after the investigation findings were published. Major clients terminated contracts. New business dried up almost completely. The company's valuation plummeted. Troy's father, board member Howard Daniels, called an emergency board meeting to address the crisis. According to several former colleagues who still spoke with me, the meeting was brutal. "Troy, you've destroyed 2 decades of reputation building in less than 2 years," Howard reportedly told his son in front of the entire board. "You pushed out our most valuable employee, implemented practices that violated industry standards, and turned profitable client relationships into expensive lawsuits. This is a disaster. The board voted unanimously to remove Troy from his position as Director of Strategic Innovation. He was reassigned to a junior sales role with no direct reports and a 60% salary reduction. But Henderson's problems didn't end with Troy's demotion. The lawsuits continued. The revenue decline accelerated. The company's reputation in Cleveland's manufacturing community was permanently damaged. Meanwhile, Brennan Solutions Group was thriving. I had hired 3 experienced consultants to help manage our growing client base. Monthly revenue had reached $85,000 and was growing steadily. We had 16 active clients and a waiting list of prospects wanting to work with us. The contrast was stark. The company that forced me out was collapsing under the weight of its own unethical practices, while the business I built from nothing was becoming the go-to solution for companies seeking reliable manufacturing consulting. But there was one more confrontation that needed to happen. The final confrontation happened 6 months after I launched Brennan Solutions Group at the Cleveland Manufacturing Expo, the industry's biggest annual networking event. I was there representing my company, which had just been named Emerging Consultancy of the Year by the Cleveland Business Association. My booth was busy with prospects and existing clients stopping by to congratulate me on the award. That's when Troy appeared. He looked terrible. The confident, arrogant young executive who had publicly demoted me was gone, replaced by someone who looked exhausted, defeated, and desperate. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was uncombed. He had dark circles under his eyes. "Walter, we need to talk." I excused myself from the conversation I was having and stepped aside with Troy. "What can I do for you?" "I need your help. Henderson is drowning. We're facing 3 lawsuits. We've lost 40% of our client base, and the board is talking about selling the company or shutting down entirely. You know this business better than anyone. Could you possibly consider coming back as a consultant to help us turn things around?" The irony was almost too perfect. 6 months ago, Troy had publicly declared I was too old to keep up with where Henderson was going. Now he was begging me to save the company from the disaster he'd created. "Troy, let me ask you something. What makes you think I'd want to help Henderson after the way I was treated?" "Because you built that company, Walter. 23 years of your life went into building those client relationships and establishing that reputation. Don't you care about preserving that legacy?" "I do care about my legacy. That's exactly why I won't help Henderson." Troy looked confused. "What do you mean?" "My legacy isn't Henderson Manufacturing, Troy. My legacy is the relationships I built, the clients I served, the problems I solved. Henderson was just the vehicle I used to do that work. When you pushed me out, you didn't destroy my legacy. You just forced me to build a new vehicle." I gestured toward my busy booth. Brennan Solutions Group represents everything I learned over 23 years, except now I own it instead of working for someone who didn't value it. I'm working with clients who appreciate my experience instead of mocking it. I'm building something sustainable instead of watching it be destroyed by ego and shortcuts. "Walter, please. I made mistakes. I was arrogant and stupid. But Henderson employs 63 people who had nothing to do with how I treated you. Don't they deserve a chance?" "You're right, Troy. They do deserve a chance. That's why I've already hired 3 former Henderson employees who reached out to me after seeing what was happening to the company. Good people who deserved better than working for a sinking ship." Troy's face went pale. "You're poaching our staff?" "I'm not poaching anyone. I'm offering opportunities to talented people who are smart enough to see that Henderson's problems go much deeper than one bad leader. The company's foundation was built on relationships and trust, and you systematically destroyed both. No consultant can fix that. So that's it. You're just going to watch Henderson fail." "No, Troy. I'm going to watch Brennan Solutions Group succeed. There's a difference. I'm focused on building something meaningful instead of dwelling on past injustices. Henderson's failure is a consequence of your choices, not my revenge." I paused, then offered something I didn't know him, but felt compelled to share anyway. "You know what you got wrong, Troy? You thought experience was obsolete because it seemed slow and old-fashioned. But experience isn't about resisting change. It's about understanding what actually works over the long term instead of chasing whatever sounds impressive in the moment. You prioritized efficiency over relationships, speed over quality, and shortcuts over integrity. Those choices might have looked good on quarterly reports for a while, but they destroyed the actual foundation of the business. The clients didn't leave because Henderson was old-fashioned. They left because you stopped treating them like they mattered. Troy stood there silently, processing what I'd said. I don't wish you failure, Troy. I hope you learn from this experience and become someone who builds things instead of just dismantling what others created. But Henderson's problems are yours to solve, not mine. I've moved on to building something better. I returned to my booth, leaving Troy standing alone in the crowded expo hall. I never saw him again. 2 years after that confrontation at the Cleveland Manufacturing Expo, Brennan Solutions Group has become everything I hoped it would be and more. We now have 11 full-time employees and a network of 15 specialized consultants. Annual revenue exceeded $2 million last year, and we're projecting $3.1 million this year. We work with 43 active clients across 6 states, providing comprehensive manufacturing consulting that prioritizes long-term relationships over quick transactions. Troy thought he could shortcut his way to success by eliminating anyone who represented values he didn't understand. What he learned, too late, was that those values weren't obstacles to success. They were the foundation. 6 months ago, I received an unexpected LinkedIn message from Troy. It was brief. Walter, I've spent 2 years thinking about our last conversation at the expo. You were right about everything. I'm sorry for how I treated you, and I'm grateful for the lesson you taught me, even though I wasn't ready to hear it at the time. I hope you and Catherine are well. Troy. I read it several times, considering whether to respond. Finally, I wrote back. Troy, I appreciate you reaching out. I hope you found work that fulfills you and that you're building something you're proud of. Character and resilience outlast arrogance and shortcuts every time. Wishing you well. Walter. Because that's what I've learned through this entire experience. Success isn't about revenge or proving people wrong. Success is about building something meaningful, treating people with dignity, and having the courage to start over when necessary. I'm 58 now, running a thriving business I built from nothing, working with people I respect, and finally being valued for the experience and expertise I've spent a lifetime developing. Troy was wrong about one thing above all others. I wasn't too old to keep up with where business was going. I was exactly the right age to show everyone where it should go. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let other people's lack of vision define your potential. And sometimes the greatest success comes from being forced to build something better than what you lost.
If this story got you thinking, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that hit deep, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And hey, if you know someone who needs to hear this one, share it with them. Thanks for watching.